Okay, welcome to Coach's Corner. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you do here at university?
All right. I am Mrs. Courtney Hanks. I teach the journalism program at University High School, which also includes our news and yearbook program. Um, yeah.
Okay, and how long have you been at university?
This was my fifth year at university, so 5 years advising there.
Okay, and how long have you been in the county?
I have been in Volusia County for 8 years, so my entire teaching career. But I also was a student of Volusia County, so
Okay, all right, and at what high school was that?
I went to DeLand High School.
Okay, I didn't know that. I honestly thought I'd heard that you went to Deltona. I thought you were one of Coach Kell's students.
No, actually, both my sisters were. So we were zoned for Deltona. Both my sisters went there. I went to DeLand because I was in the IB program.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's where I got that confusion at from
Yeah,
your
so like,
sisters or something.
and my husband and like my husband's all his friends and stuff. Like I grew up in DeBerry, so all of them had Kells. So I always knew of Kells before then, and he knew my family from my sisters. So
Okay. All right. And well, that answers the question on where you grew up in DeBerry.
yeah, I
So,
grew up in DeBerry. Yeah, I went to DeBerry Elementary. I was in the second grade when it opened. So my name is in that. There's a time capsule somewhere there with all the other inaugural students. Um, and then I went to Beltona Middle, and then I went to DeLand High School and graduated in 2007.
okay. All right. And it's speaking as someone else who has also grown up in the area, it's kind of cool seeing how the place is just changing. I mean, just seeing not only university, high school, um, exploding, so to speak, but just all the different developments and businesses and everything just moving in and almost heck taking over. Just I know when I was a kid, there was one stoplight and and that was it. And now it's almost like a real city. That's just a little bit crazy. And back when you were a kid, DeBerry was just a nice little bitty city. And
When my parents moved there was only one street that wasn't paved. So yeah, it has grown a lot. I think Florida in general has grown a lot. Um, I think DeBerry is still a small town. It still has that feel to it. And I will say, I never thought I would be an adult living in DeBerry. And I was just like my kids when they say that they would get out of here. But I love my family and I wanted to be close to them. And it is a very interesting and cool experience to teach in the same county you went to school in.
right, it definitely is, definitely. And as like before you got to high school, were there any extracurricular type things that you were involved in?
Before high school, I did t-ball when I was really young, and I was really bad at it. I would just play with the bugs on the outfield. Um, I am not very athletic. Um, and then when I did gymnastics, did dance, and then I did in middle school, I was a cheerleader for the Deltona Wolves, of course. I was a flyer. And then for anybody who knows me, I'm very tiny. And then high school, I did not. I did not do any sports at all. I focused more on the arts. Yeah.
Okay. And is that where you kind of found your groove for the media type thing when you got involved with arts, or was that even later on?
Um, I really fell in love with art in high school. I was always in drawing classes, even for the summers and stuff. I was also really into science. I used to like volunteer at the zoo, um, and I used to always take classes and stuff. But I think I had a really good art teacher in high school, Mr. Carson. And with IB, you have to kind of pick tracks for your electives. So I chose the artistic route, and I actually went to college for 2 years as an art major. Um, before I switched to English. So they're both two things that I love very much, but I'm a very curious person. So I read and explore a lot of different things.
Okay. All right. And how did you end up going from because it sounds like you started out maybe teaching English, is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
How
Um,
yeah, how did that transition go from teaching English to being where you're at now?
I will say I love English a lot. I love to read. I'm an avid reader. Um, but when I first started teaching, I taught seventh grade English, and I love my middle school kids, and I loved teaching English. But I think I wanted something that I felt more creatively challenged in. Just something with me as a person. I need to constantly be like learning and mastering new skills. Um, I yeah. So I, once I felt like I had my kind of grasp into teaching, which took 2 years, I asked if I could take over the yearbook program with another teacher at Heritage Middle School where I was teaching before. And the teacher was stepping down from the position, so it was perfect timing. And I just saw this opportunity to be making something. And I love to make things and build and learn. So that very first year, I learned a lot and I had these amazing kids. But I think I was ready to move to high school. I felt like I love middle school. I do love teaching. I'm one of those crazy people that actually likes middle schoolers. I think that they're just like in this like amazing part of their lives and their journeys where they don't have any like they're still figuring out what preconceived notions they have of themselves and like what they actually want in their lives. And it's just such an interesting moment to be a part of. And I felt like I could really kind of push and guide some kids in the right direction. And Yearbook is a really interesting job because we spend so much time with these kids outside of the, like, we're not really teachers. And I've talked to Kels about this before. Like, I feel more like I'm a coach or a mentor because I get to know these kids on such a personal level. And we're working on something together for long hours. So that's something I love about Yearbook is that I get to build these relationships with these kids, and then I get to help guide them through their years when, you know, originally middle school and now high school, and helping them learn new skills and figuring out what it is they like to do in life. And a lot of my kids go on to do graphic design or photography or writing or journalism. But even if they don't, they walk away, you know, having somebody who cared about them and understood their needs and skills throughout high school. So, yeah, I guess I kind of went off a little bit on that question, but yeah, it was more like I was looking for something else. And so I started teaching yearbook. And then when the position opened to teach news and yearbook at university, I applied, and Vito and Mr. Neal interviewed me. And it was just a good fit. It just felt like I was ready to go and try something new.
Right, right. That definitely is a really cool part about the extra when you put it in, whether it's like you said, you're just like a coach because of the extra time that you put in, the extra connections that you get to build with those kids. Because when you know the classroom setting is one thing, the 46, 47 minutes that you get to spend with them,
I
you
just feel
know,
like goals
versus
are
the
so different. Like when you're teaching a class, like my goal is to get kids to understand a concept and be able to apply it to their lives. When I am being a advisor to my yearbook staff, and I think this is very similar to coaching, um, you know, my goal is to help them develop these skills and to see their own potential and to find the right fit within the team. And then it's all of these other life skills, like learning how to collaborate, learning how to suffer through a really bad situation, learning how to deal with conflict. And when we start to kind of go through those things together, it really is a different relationship. And our goals are just really different. Like when I move from being a teacher to my students to being an advisor to them, it's like, oh, I almost am a different person because my goal isn't just to get them to sit down in a chair and learn something. My goal is to help them flourish.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's a really cool thing to switch that hat and to get them to see a different person. And like you said, so they know that someone cared about them. And even if they don't ever do anything in that realm again, they know that Mrs. Hanks cared while they were in that program, and they could reach out to Mrs. Hanks anytime they ever want.
One of
So
my students posted something the other day on Instagram, and I was laughing because she did something, and I was just like, "I'm so proud of you," and I'm always so proud of you. And she messaged back, and she's like, "I know." And that's like, I think that that's like such an important like thing I try to give my kids is like, there's somebody in your corner for the rest of your life that's always rooting for you and trying to just help you be happy,
yes.
find your passion.
Right, right. That's very cool. Because you know that when she replied, "I know," you know how sincere that was when she said, "I know."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and I think that you just answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How important do you feel that the kids getting involved in these extracurricular things, whether it's sports, whether it's journalism, yearbook, band, whatever it is, how important do you feel that it is for kids to get involved in those extracurricular activities?
Weaver, it is so important. It's so, so important. I tell my kids, we have that freshman day and they all come in and they're just like little babies in your chairs. Um, I usually just talk to them for 30 minutes about finding a place on campus because I think that the kids who never really feel like high school was an experience, that they, had good relationships with their teachers or had good relationships with even classmates. A lot of that I attribute to not being in some type of program that gives them a place and a space on campus to try their wings. I see it when they're in JROTC. I see it when they're in band. And as a yearbook advisor, I have a very strong umbrella view of how these kids develop within these different programs over the years. And sports teams, looking at a lot of my kids who are football players or basketball players, just like them finding that space where they feel accepted, that they are growing, and that they have a group of people that care about them, it just changes everything. And that's something I try to build into my program all the time. It's just this a sense of you have a place to go, you have a purpose here on campus, you are involved in the happiness of other people here, and that this is a community and that there's a way for you to not just sit down and be like, I don't like our school because it doesn't have school spirit or the teachers suck or nobody cares about me. Like you can be part of the people who care about people. You can be part of the reason why we're all together on a Friday night. Like there's so much more to being involved. And I think it comes back to too, like your life, like what you want out of your life. And I tell my kids this all the time. Like I said, I try to be a mentor to them. You've got to make decisions. If you think life's just going to happen to you and you're going to get all the things you want, that's not how it happens. You have to be part of the process. You have to be harder working than anyone else you know. You have to love what you do. You have to be exploring your passions because you only get one life. So if you're spending it just, waiting for things to happen to you and complaining in the corner, you're really just saying that you don't appreciate the gifts of life that you have and that you don't want anything to be better. So very long story short, I think it is super, super important for kids to join these extracurriculars because that's where you find your family.
Right. Find your family. Yeah, I like that. That's definitely where you find your family, where you feel comfortable at. Um, and looking back at your high school, do you wish there was something that you would have tried that maybe you didn't for whatever reason?
I will say I'm pretty good at talking myself into things. So I did do things like I went out for Miss DHS, which I'm not nearly talented enough to do like performance anything. And I just did it because I just wanted to be a part of that like little committee of girls meeting and just talking and playing. And it was such a fun, enriching experience. But I mean, I think that I was like vice president of Key Club, which was huge at DeLand. I know it's not very big at UHS, but that's like a very large club. I think if I talked to myself like in high school, I think I would have just told myself to kind of put my guard down and be a more loving person. I think that a lot of kids are going through you're just so naturally self-centered and it's just part of your brain's development when you're a child that you are just focused on your experience. And this is something that I try to teach my kids all the time is just compassion. Like when somebody is acting strange in your classroom or doesn't really seem to, be interested and like, oh, that kid just, he's not like us. I try to teach my kids, like, first of all, there may be so many reasons for that. And just because you don't know somebody's story doesn't mean you can't care about them. So I think me as an adult, you go through so many more experiences through life, and you learn to be a much more compassionate person. And I think that's something I would want to communicate to myself more than just like, I joined things, I did things. I think I could have gone out for a sports team. I always felt like I had to be doing it since I was in elementary school. Like the girls soccer team, like they were so good, like those kids have been playing forever. I'm like, I can't join that as a freshman. Right. I think that's like something that is like a misconception. Like that's what JV teams are for. Yeah, I think more than anything else is just understanding that everybody is going through a tough time. High school is a really challenging experience. And we have the opportunity just as people to constantly be reaching out to others and being compassionate and trying to understand that we all come from different places, we all have different experiences, and we can use ourselves for good. We can be more open and kind to others.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, no doubt. And you've already given a lot of answers that could be.
No, sorry, the dog's there.
That's okay. Just protecting you, that's all. It's probably just the garbage man or something like that, right?
The people who walk by on the street, she likes to make sure I know they're there.
Right.
Yeah,
she's protecting you, that's all.
Yeah, there's a lot of walkers right
now. So yeah, some of the things you've said could definitely be the answer to this, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this. What is one thing that you hope that students get from being in a Mrs. Hanks led, whether it's classroom or activity after school? What's one thing you hope they get?
I hope that they learn to be more curious. I think that, maybe this is something that I didn't do when I was younger. I don't know. I felt like I learned a lot about different things, but I kind of just like was waiting for somebody to tell me I was good at something. For me to be like, oh, that's what I should do for my life. I think if you're kind of waiting for that, you're probably not going to find that moment. Like you need to be the one that's reaching out and learning and trying new things. And even if it doesn't seem like, okay, like maybe journalism, like I don't expect my journalism 1 kids, like 99.9% of them are not going to become journalists. Like that's not what I tried to gear the class to be. I try to have them leave with an understanding of how journalists participate in our society, how that function is so important, how they can be better at reading the news and better at giving out information, and that they can try some skills. They can learn how to put, a spread together, or how to make your photography better, and these little skills, like maybe they don't have to be your career, your end all, but these little things will enhance your life. And all of these things come together at the end of the day and become who you are. So just opening yourselves up to those skills and those, lessons, and just being a curious person, and you don't know where that's going to take you and how those skills will build. I just had a student like last week tell me that she wants to get into photography as a side business through college, which is a fantastic thing for her to be doing. But she's been in my class for 4 years. She's been learning about photography, and she's very talented at it. But when I say talent, I always mean hard work, because you can be talented at anything if you just work your butt off at it. But she just made that call after 4 years. This skill has been sitting in her lap, and she's been developing it. But it wasn't until last week that she decided to see the value in it. So just be curious, stay open to things, take different electives, and these kids who come out of my class, I really hope that they walk away just with a better understanding of different parts of the world and seeing how they fit into their own lives.
Great answer. Well, what's the best part about working at university?
The kids. I love my kids. I say this all the time, and I'm just such a snob. Like somebody will come up to me, like an administrator, and they're like, your kids were here, they were helping out, they were so great. Like they did such a phenomenal job. I just wanted to tell you. I'm like, girl, I know. They didn't do a good job for you to tell me. I'm like, my kids are amazing. They astound me every day. I put so much responsibility into their laps. Like this yearbook is theirs. And like we talked about earlier, people don't really understand what goes into a yearbook, but there's just a lot of moving parts. And I feel like I give them this responsibility, and it feels heavy and it feels big, but they grapple with it and they do amazing things with it. And my kids are phenomenal. Like they impress me every day. I was nothing like them when I was in high school. I would never have the wherewithal to be as with it as they are or as responsible as they are. And they just do. They show up, they do the work, and they're amazing. So best part of UHS is the kids. I have amazing kids.
Right. Why don't you go ahead and maybe to the kids at university or the ones that are getting ready to come to university that maybe don't know anything or are thinking about, maybe I want to get involved with UHS Press, or maybe I want to sign up for journalism, or I want to get involved with the yearbook. Go ahead and tell them a little bit about that, or talk about some of the trips or some of the awards that you guys get every year. Go ahead and talk about that.
So I am very fortunate that I advise one of the top yearbook classes in the country. So my kids are competitive. So we actually enter so we enter into photography competitions, writing competitions, design competitions, leadership competitions. Just like that overall book gets submitted to different things. Just in November, our book placed second in its class. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things like people don't always think of it like, oh, this is such a competitive thing. But if you compared it to like football or, JROTC going to nationals and making second place, that would be a really big deal. So I get it's academic. It's hard to make these comparisons, but that's what it's like. We're just really competitive, and there's a lot of reasons I push my kids like that. First, I think that kids need to strive for excellence. I think our society asks for mediocrity. I think even the education system asks for mediocrity. You just need to show up and do your work and they'll get the grade. That's not our program. That's not how it's run. You get what you put into it. You have to work hard. You have to be curious and open. You have to be open to feedback. You have to be willing to give feedback. You have to be a leader. You have to be a friend. And these kids just really learn so much through that process. And when they do create these award-winning publications, it gives them these experiences that they can put on their actual college applications. I do remember that from high school, is that when I did go to fill out my stuff, I'm like, well, I participate in all these things, but I don't have like a lot to show for it. And I think that my job as advisor and as a teacher to my students is to provide them opportunities to have a list of things that they can be putting down on these college applications, positions that they can hold, awards and recognition that they can personally win, and then as a staff we can win. They walk away with a really impressive resume and the skills to be able to design and put together a resume that they can take with them to college or to the workforce. That it's just really important to me. I want them to get as much as they can out of their high school experiences. I want them to squeeze the marrow out of it. So that's the experience I try to provide them. And it is intense. I'm not going to say my program is at all like a walk in the park or, just like a little fun club on campus. And, I think that can be a misconception. Like, we don't just take pictures. We do take pictures. We take thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures a day. But it's just a part of the process of my students learning how to become better photographers, but B, also documenting the school year and providing this community service for our community.
Right. And like you said, not only do you take thousands and thousands of pictures, but you put in hours and hours of work as well.
Oh, this always has kids in it.
Yeah. I know that
hours, after school hours, weekend hours, go to camps. We went to DC this year. I usually go to Columbia University, and it's my goal to one day take kids there. It's a money thing. But we win nationals at Columbia. So it's lots of hours, but it's like a labor of love. And we actually equate the yearbook to a labor. At the beginning of the year, we get married, and then the baby comes, 8 months later or whenever. And we finish the book. And it's this huge labor of love, and you just hope that it comes out and it's something that the school will love forever and ever, and that it can be a strong reflection of who we are as a staff.
Right. Well, I know that a lot of the late nights that I put in and early mornings that I'm there, one of the cars that I always see in the parking lot is yours. So, I mean, that alone says either your car breaks down a lot in the parking lot, or you're there just as much or more than I am. So
Well, yeah,
yeah,
we have kids that like do baseball and they're like, okay, I've got practice. So they go to practice, they come from practice back to the classroom because we're still there working on stuff. It's a
right,
26-page book. You've got to imagine that every single word in that has to be interviewed, vetted, put together, typed out, edited a million times. The photos have to be taken. We have to sort through thousands of photos for each spread. We have to then put those into a design that makes sense, and then make sure we're not missing things or names aren't misspelled, which, sorry, we do misspell names all the time. But it's just, yeah, there's just so much that goes into 2 pages of a yearbook that I think it's easy to look at those pages. And I think too, probably most people don't realize this, my kids design from the front cover to the back cover. There's not a single other person who touches that book. There's no plant that's putting your yearbook together. Like, it's kids that make every inch of this thing. And I just sit there in the background and hope they're doing a good job and cheer them on, because I can't be the one that documents their experience. It's their experience.
right, right. Yeah, well, I think you guys do an awesome job. And again, I I want to I want to reiterate to everyone, because I want to make sure they understand, and I will compare it exactly like you did. You guys came in second place in the national tournament, national championship, just like if our football team, our baseball team, our basketball team, anything like that, if there was a national tournament for any sport at the school, it's just like they would go to the finals, to the national finals, and they were national runners up. You guys did that, and you guys do that on a fairly regular basis, correct?
Yeah, and it's been a journey to get here. I mean, when I started at the school, we had 3 working cameras. So for an entire news program and yearbook program. So it's been a ton of work to get us to this place. And I'm nothing but proud of my kids and how much they have put into this program to get it where it's at. And if I go back to the very first year I started at UHS, those kids laid that groundwork. And then the next year, those kids laid that groundwork. And every single year we build. I mean, yearbook is not funded. We have $0 that are given to us. And I mean, as you know, the school doesn't give money to people. Like, it's like this huge myth that there's just all this
Right.
money floating around and it's just coming to us and we're just like spending it on t-shirts. Like, no, we have to work so hard for every single penny we earn, just so that way we can have good cameras and we can document the year, or we can have SD cards for the kids to use, or that on a Friday night when it's 9 o'clock, I can order pizza for those kids so that way they're not starving as we're sitting in that lab.
Right, right. Okay, and what would you like to say to anyone that's watching this, whether it's the students, the parents, the community people? What would you like to say to them in this unique situation that we're in right now?
I want to say thank you. I know that yearbook can be the most like the rock inside so many people's shoe. And it's just because we have to be the most, because we're so aggressively hardworking. I think that it can be like, I mean, I don't want to say off-putting, but I think it's just you're seeing the tip of the iceberg, and it's easy to say it's small. And I think that we have just the most supportive community with students and parents, the teachers on campus who do so much for us, that really just like, they're bending over backwards. And I know that they don't always see that we're also bending over backwards where we're at. So just knowing that we appreciate how much they do for our program, because as much as we are hardworking and we are, award winning, we're not that without our community. We need all of them to be part of that process. We need that to be them to contribute and to show up for their interviews and to let us pull the kids out of the classroom for the 10th time, even though they really don't want to, because that's how we make the book. And at the end of the day, as much as it wins awards, and I do that for my kids, this is a baby for the school. This is something that we want people to look back on, kids, parents, families in our community, to look back on it and really experience what it was like to be in 2019, 2020. I mean, our yearbook covered COVID-19. Like, we got interviews, we got stuff put in there for that. And that didn't happen because, we're hardworking. It happened because our community helped support us in a time of need. So thank you to everyone who is a part of our process, because every little tiny thing counts, and you guys make this possible.
Wow. So you guys got stuff about COVID-19 in this year's yearbook.
We did.
Wow.
Had 100 pages in edit when we went on spring break.
Wow. That says a lot right there. And so now comes the hard question.
Okay.
If you could have dinner with any 4 people, dead or alive, who would it be?
Dinner with any 4 people, dead or alive?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Margaret Atwood, Neil Gaiman.
Well, you got to tell me who. I don't know the Margaret Atwood person.
Margaret Atwood is a author from Canada. She wrote *Handmaid's Tale*, which is probably the more
okay, I know that
story. But she has written a ton of dystopian literature, and I studied lots of her work over time. Oh yeah, Eudora Welty, also love her. She's also an author. And then Neil Gaiman is a writer as well. He also works with comics. Big nerd over here. And then who would my 4th person be? Anna Rifle Bond. She's a artist in Winter Park that I really admire.
Oh, okay. So a local person.
Yeah, she's amazing. She is an international artist. She does tons of work, but she's went to UCF and she lives in Winter Park.
Okay. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Mrs. Hanks, thank you very much for your time. And I know that I appreciate everything that you do, and I appreciate everything that your students do. And I mean, I hope that everyone does, and I hope that this video helps shed a little bit of light on what you guys do, because without people like you and your students, university would not be the school that it is. So, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
And I hope that before too long we get to see you guys on campus again. So, well, if there isn't anything else that you'd like to say, no? Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, then I will go ahead and stop the recording.